How's it going, everybody? This is Ideas of Ice and Fire. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss. Now, this has become one of my favorite fantasy book series ever, and it's not a perfect series, but it has so much charm, and I just could not put these books down when I was reading them, and I am looking forward to introducing you guys to the world of The Kingkiller Chronicles if you haven't read the series before. The Kingkiller Chronicles follows Kvothe, who is a young arcanist in training. The story is told from the point of view of the main character when he's a bit older, and he's retelling the story, basically telling his entire journey. Now, as I said earlier, Kvothe is an arcanist in training. And if I had to describe what an arcanist is, I would say think of a wizard, but it's not like Harry Potter. They don't have like inherent magical abilities. In order to become an arcanist, you have to go through a lot of studying and training. It's not easy. At the university where Kvothe learns to become an arcanist, they have an entire ward for students that have gone completely insane because the training is so strenuous. Now, if you've read A Song of Ice and Fire, then you know that the magic in A Song of Ice and Fire is, it's quite vague. You don't actually understand how it works. Well, in the Kingkiller Chronicles, it's totally not like that. The magic is more akin to science. In fact, people at the university kind of scoff when outsiders refer to what they do as magic, because to them it's not really magic. It's just something that they've learned to do, like chemistry or any other form of science. They just have an understanding of the nature of the world, and they can use it to their advantage. Now focus your Aler and follow me as I give you a brief synopsis of The Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss, and this may contain some spoilers. I won't spoil any of the huge stuff, but it does have some spoilers in it. So, when our story starts out, our main character Kvothe is very young. He is a member of a traveling theater troupe known as the Edema Ruh. Along with his parents, his father is working on his magnum opus, which is a song about this legendary group of malevolent entities known as the Chandrian. One night after foraging in the forest, Kvothe comes back to find his entire troupe has been murdered, and at his own parents' fire sit the Chandrian. Now, you've got to understand the full impact of what this was like for him. Everyone that he's ever known has just been murdered by a fairy tale because no one thought the Chandrian even existed. It's a children's story. Kvothe is actually spared, and he ends up going a little nuts. He kind of suppresses the memories. He takes his father's lute, and he lives in the woods for months, and he plays the lute until all the strings break, and then he's like, okay, I gotta start moving now. And he ends up in the city Tarbean, where he ends up being a beggar on the streets for 3 years, and he gets beaten, he gets stabbed, has a really tough time. But then one day, at an inn, he hears a story about the Chandrian. And then suddenly all of his suppressed memories come back, and he remembers what happens to his parents. He remembers that they were all killed by the Chandrian, and he's like, holy crap, the Chandrian are real, and they murdered my entire troupe. So Kvothe sells his last possession. He makes his way up to the university. He goes there because there's like this huge archive there with all types of books stretching back for who knows how long. And there's got to be something in those archives about about information about the Chandrian. But the problem is the archives are so huge that, it would take forever to find what he's looking for. So a significant portion of the novels is Kvothe at the university, and he's learning to harness his power as an arcanist, including the Name of the Wind, which is very elusive. That's also the title of the first book. It's very difficult to do. Basically, in the Kingkiller Chronicles, learning the name of something, the true name of something, gives you power over it. Let's say someone knew the name of water, they'd be able to control water. Or someone knew the name of fire, they'd be able to control fire. Now, naming, unlike other types of magic in the story like sympathy, is kind of mysterious. No one really understands exactly how it works, and not a lot of people can actually do it. Now, Kvothe goes on a lot of adventures within and outside of the university, and it's always entertaining to read. The books are very well thought out and very charming. Like I said, I could not put these books down while reading them, seriously. And when I got done, I read them again. So that's how much I love these books, because I usually can't read a book right after I finish, but these books I was just like, yeah, I'll totally go on this adventure again. So here's an interesting bit about the Kingkiller Chronicles. It's actually a trilogy, but there are only 2 books out, which are Wise Man's Fear and Name of the Wind. Now, Wise Man's Fear was actually released in 2011. Now, does that sound familiar to anyone? We've been waiting 6 years for the 3rd book, Doors of Stone. That doesn't sound familiar to anyone, you know? A 6-year wait? No, we've been waiting the same amount of time for Doors of Stone as we have for The Winds of Winter. Yes, people need to give these authors a break. Patrick Rothfuss and George R. R. Martin write very complex novels, and they take time to write. If they just wrote them in like 6 months, they'd be crappy and no one would want to read them. It's the time and effort that's being put into these books that makes them so great. Now, I will definitely say that I enjoyed Name of the Wind more than Wise Man's Fear. I felt as though Wise Man's Fear was a little slow at times. I felt like a lot of the stuff in Ventus was just really just kind of slow and kind of just dragged on. And there's one character in particular throughout both books that absolutely drives me nuts every time she shows up. And I'm so bored out of my mind reading the chapters when she appears. And that character, I'm sorry if you like her, is Dinah. Oh my god, Dinah, I hate you. I wouldn't mind if she wasn't in the books as much as she is. It's always the same thing. Quoth is super in love with Dinah, but he's afraid to say so because she's like super promiscuous and she's always around other guys. And she's totally like that. I'm a strong, independent woman. I can do anything a man can, which I'm usually fine with. But in her case, I just feel like it's so overdone. I was over their dumb little romance/not romance halfway through Name of the Wind. But she just keeps showing up over and over again. And every time she like disappears, because she disappears all the time, like out of nowhere, Quoth will be looking for her and then out of nowhere she'll just be gone. And I'd be like, yes, maybe this time she'll stay gone forever. But then nope, she'd pop back up and I'm just like, ugh, oh my god. One character that I really enjoyed, however, was Master Elodin, who is one of the professors at the university. He's totally freaking nuts. At one point, he gets Quoth to jump off the roof of one of the buildings, and when Quoth does it, he's like, wow, I can't believe you actually did that, and he laughs at him. It's so funny. I literally could not stop laughing when I read it. Now, Elodin is actually the master namer at the school, which is interesting because people kind of take him as a joke, but he's actually like really powerful. He's actually like extremely powerful. And he actually begins to teach Quoth naming. He actually begins to teach Quoth how to call the name of the wind later on. Another character that I really enjoy is Devi. Oh my god, she's totally a strong female character, but unlike Dinah, she can totally back it up. She's highly skilled at sympathy, which is one of the forms of magic that you can learn at the university, and she's a total badass. Like at one point, Quoth challenges her, and she totally magically whips his ass, and it's so awesome. Like, cause you don't mess with Devi, she will destroy you. It was so awesome. As I said earlier, I definitely enjoyed The Name of the Wind more than the second book. I felt The Name of the Wind was very fast-paced. It kept moving. I was always invested in what was going on. I was always super interested in knowing what was going to happen next. The second book is great, don't get me wrong, but there are parts of it where I just kind of don't understand why they're there. So, okay. Later in Wise Man's Fear, the mayor of Ventus has hired Quoth to go hunt down a group of bandits with this other group of people. And he sends Quoth because Quoth is actually a rather extraordinary arcanist, even though he's quite young. So they're basically in the woods hunting down these bandits, and at some point they come across Felurian, who is this legendary fey creature, kind of like a sexual demigoddess that kills men by having sex with them. Long story short, Quoth and Felurian totally get down, but she spares him because she's just like so in love with him. Now, that wasn't the part that bothered me. It kind of came out of nowhere, and it was really jarring. And I'm kind of like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. Just came out of nowhere. But that's not the part that bothered me. So she takes Quoth's virginity, and then after that, in like the last third of Wise Man's Fear, Quoth is just like banging everybody, and there are like long sections of the book where he's just having sex. And it's just kind of jarring because it comes out of nowhere. And, you know, I usually don't mind sex in books, and but this was just like, wow, like that was it's kind of weird. Like every time it happens, I have to admit, it's kind of weird. It is. And that brings me to kind of my last criticism of these books as a whole. And Kvothe, he's kind of just too perfect. Like, he always succeeds. Like, a recurring thing for these novels is that Kvothe needs money for each semester at the universe, and he always ends up getting the money on time. It's always like, oh, how am I gonna get this money to pay for my tuition? And then like the last minute, something will happen and he'll get like a crap ton of money for some reason. Or there's a sex goddess in the woods that has never spared a single man, but of course Kvothe is the one that escapes. No one has ever gotten into the university at age 15, but of course Kvothe is the one that does it. And he's like the greatest musician ever, and he's like the greatest songwriter ever, and like the greatest poet ever. And I'm just like, oh my god, what else is he like so good at? Now you kind of get the sense that, you know, he can't fail. Now, one thing I will say is that maybe, because I told you guys that these novels are told from the point of view of Kvothe in the future. Now, early on in Name of the Wind, Kvothe does say that all stories require some little lies, otherwise they won't be good stories. So maybe Kvothe is lying about some of this stuff, but I don't know, it's yet to be seen because Doors of Stone isn't out. But you kind of get the sense that he just can't fail, which, you know. That being said, however, I can deal with that because these books are so well written and so entertaining. Now, I'm going to tell you guys about one of my favorite parts in this entire book series. It happens in Wise Man's Sphere. Now, Kvothe ends up in the mystical land of the Fae, which is like this crazy other dimension where all these Fae creatures live, and he comes across this evil entity that lives inside this tree called a Cathay. Now, the Cathay knows all possible futures, so it knows the outcome of anything that it says, and it will always manipulate a person to sending humanity on the most disastrous possible future. All right, and now the people of the Fae are like super like scared of this thing. Like, if anyone even goes near it, they'll like kill you and like burn the body, like stomp on your ashes. They'll totally like eradicate any trace of you. For some reason, Kvothe doesn't get caught. I don't really know why, but yeah, it's like a huge deal because the Cathay is, according to the Fae, the most dangerous creature in existence, because once you talk to it, you are in its power. Like, it will always say what it needs to say to lead you to the worst outcome, because it knows the future. It knows it knows exactly how you're going to react to what it says. So say it speaks to a little kid. Because of essentially the butterfly effect, that kid may one day grow up to fall in love with a princess, not realizing that it's been affected by the Cathay. He falls in love with the princess, he marries the princess, but the princess was betrothed to another prince in some other distant land. And because of this betrayal, the prince's family wages war against the princess's family, and it leads to the destruction of both kingdoms and the deaths of thousands of people. That's how the Cathay works. So you have to wonder, since Kvothe has spoken to the Cathay, does that mean that all his actions will inevitably lead to doom? It's an interesting thought. So, now, these books are absolutely fantastic. Although I do have my criticisms, I cannot say I was not super entertained reading these books. They're really, really good. You will not regret reading them. And I'm eagerly awaiting Doors of Stone, the final book in the trilogy. Whenever it's released, I will wait. Okay, so tell me what you think of these books if you've read them. Like I said, I'd highly recommend them to you if you haven't, but leave in the comments what you think if you have. So thank you guys for listening. Make sure you like and subscribe. I'll see you guys later.